Want to try this sleep aid? It really works. What my Mill handed me, saying those words, was a different kind of sleeping pill than usual. Although she knew I regularly take sleeping pills, I found it strange that she would hand me a new kind of medication. I pretended to take the sleeping pill she gave me, but discreetly threw it away. And then I pretended to be asleep. Then my Mill came into my bedroom. "You're asleep now, right?" When she confirmed, my Mill began rummaging through the closet in my room. She did it with a practiced manner, and I was perplexed. "My name is Emma, and I am 30 years old. I live with my husband, Matt, who is the same age as me. My husband is an office worker. As for me, I'm a comic book artist. I have a monthly column, and I like to think I'm one of the better-selling comic book artists out there." The meeting of us as a couple happened during our time as high school classmates. Back then, even though we weren't dating, we got along well and enjoyed each day together. We graduated without dating and went our separate ways in life, but we reconnected at a class reunion 2 years ago. Upon reuniting, our mutual attraction led to us starting a relationship, and 6 months later, we decided to get married. Even at that time, I already had a serialization as a manga artist. Instead of moving, my husband moved into our home, and our married life began. Our home is filled with so many things. Since moving would have been quite a challenge, I was truly grateful that my husband moved in with me. Fortunately, we had some spare rooms in our house, so one of those became my husband's personal room. It was understood from the beginning that we would have separate bedrooms. The reason for that was because my sleep schedule was irregular, and I suffered from insomnia. After years of irregular sleep, I've reached a point where I can't sleep without medication. That's how my days have been going lately. Tony was really worried about my sleep problems and started exploring various home remedies daily to help me get some rest. He's a kind and caring husband. My younger brother, Bob, is someone I can really connect with in conversation. My dad passed away from an illness when we were little. My mom raised my siblings and me all by herself, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. Now I'm able to support her financially through sending money, which is my way of showing filial piety. My brother also frequently visits our mother, and both of us are able to fulfill our filial duties. He often comes over to our house as well. He's busy with work now and doesn't have a girlfriend, so when he feels lonely, he comes over to our place and drinks with my husband. My brother really looks up to my husband as if he were a true older brother. It seems that my husband is also quite pleased with it. Whenever my brother comes over, he opens new bottles of wine or shochu and seems to be enjoying himself. I'm happy that my beloved brother and husband get along. When work isn't too hectic, I like to make snacks for them. They always joke around when I make a bunch of snacks that end up being too much. I fully understand that this is a scene of happiness. I wish these blissful moments could continue. That's how I've been feeling lately. Now that I've introduced my own family, I'd like to share about my husband's family as well. My in-laws, it seems, got divorced when my husband was little. Just like me, my Mill raised my husband on her own. My husband doesn't know the reason behind their divorce. He tried asking his mother, but she wouldn't tell him. Until we got married, my husband was living with his mother alone. When my husband moved in with our family after getting married, his mother told him, "From now on, live your life freely." So currently, my mother-in-law lives alone in an apartment. My Mill apartment is about a 30-minute drive from our home, not too far and not too close. Not too far and not too close. Just the right distance, that's what I believe. My Mill also comes to our house from time to time, and we have dinner together. My Mill is quite tolerant of alcohol and often enjoys drinking with my husband. During those times, she usually ends up staying over at our place. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that the guest room is mostly reserved for my Mill and my brother. Though my younger brother and my mother-in-law often come to our house separately, They rarely cross paths, perhaps due to their consideration for each other. My brother always asks when he's coming over. Is Matt's mill planning to visit today? My mill also asks, I'm thinking of visiting your place next week. But does your brother have any plans to come over? Well, I guess since they both care about each other's feelings when they're drinking together. And besides, I work from home. So I really appreciate them giving me a heads up with those confirmation calls. One day, something happened. Can I come over next week? It was a call from my mill. Sure, that's fine. Oh, but next week, Matt will be on a business trip on Wednesday and Thursday. Oh, I see. When my mill heard that her usual drinking partner, my husband, would be away on a business trip, she fell silent, seeming unsure. Mill, what would you like to do? When I asked, she replied, oh, I see. I was planning to go on Wednesday, but Hiroya won't be there. It seemed like I had unintentionally disrupted something she was looking forward to, and I started to feel sorry. If you want, the week after next, Matt will be available any day. Should we reschedule for a different day? No, I'll go next Wednesday. Is your work okay, Emma? Well, yes. Work will be fine as it's just after a deadline. Great, that's good to hear. I've been wanting to have a drink with you, Emma. Is that all right? Due to the sleeping medication I take, I don't usually drink much alcohol. However, this time, under the pressure from my mill 7, I ended up replying, why yes. And so, with the plan set for my mother-in-law to stay over at our house next Wednesday, something else happened that same night. I received a message from my younger brother. Hey, can I come over next week? While thinking about how our home seems to be popular, I replied, since my mother-in-law will be staying over next Wednesday, could we possibly reschedule for another day? Well, bummer. Guess I'll let you know again later. And hey, sis, don't drink too much, okay? I received a quick response from my brother. He seemed disappointed. But since my mother-in-law had already made plans, there's nothing to be done about it. I'll just have to arrange for my brother to come over when my husband is around next to him. And then, on the day when my mother-in-law was coming to visit, my husband went on a business trip. If anything happens, make sure to contact me right away. Also, be careful not to drink too much alcohol and keep up with mom's pace. I know that my mother-in-law can handle alcohol well from past experiences. So I assuredly told him, all right, I'll head out then. My husband said as he left, with an unusually worried expression. I couldn't help but wonder if he was so worried about the two of us spending time together. During my free time after meeting the deadline, I was cleaning. Before the deadline, household chores tend to get neglected, so there were areas that hadn't been properly cleaned. With my mill coming over, I made sure to thoroughly clean even those neglected areas. After that, I went shopping for ingredients for snacks and alcohol. I figured my mill might bring a few bottles of wine, so I bought some mild canned Chuhai for myself. There's no way I could keep up with drinking wine along with my mill, so I chose to have a lighter canned Chuhai for myself. I also choose snacks that I think would pair well with wine. And thus, the preparations for the two-person drinking gathering with my mill were coming together. In the evening, my mill arrived. As expected, my mother-in-law came holding about 3 full bottles of wine. I couldn't help but feel a bit concerned, wondering if she planned to drink all of those bottles by herself. I'm going to borrow the kitchen for a minute. Saying that, I skillfully started cooking the ingredients she had brought. When combined with the appetizers I had prepared, there was already more food than the two of us could possibly finish. Cheers! And so, the two-person drinking party began. We started with a toast using the wine that my mill had brought. Come to think of it, why did my mother-in-law want to have a drinking party with just the two of us? Mother-in-law, why did you want to have a drinking party with just me today? Well, I wanted to have a chance to drink with my daughter alone once in a while, whenever I visit. I was actually a bit delighted that she thought that way. After that, we each enjoyed our drinks at our own pace, nibbled on snacks, and had various conversations. Especially the stories from when my husband was young were quite entertaining. I had a feeling he was mischievous back then, and it turned out to be just as I expected. I even got to see some of his cherished childhood photos. She had brought a few of them for today. They were a perfect blend of cuteness and humor, and the two of us ended up laughing heartily together. And that's how it went. And before we knew it, it was past 11 p.m. in the evening. Even though we were drinking at our own pace, we ended up having a bit too much to drink. It was about time to wrap things up. My Mill pulls something out. "Emma, have you gotten over your insomnia yet?" Well, it's kinda become a habit now. LOL. "In that case, try this. It's a good sleep aid. Wanna give it a go?" With that, she handed me a single sleeping pill. "Thank you." I thanked her, but I wasn't really keen on taking it. I wasn't comfortable taking a different sleep aid than the one I usually use. Plus, I had been drinking, so I wasn't planning on taking any sleeping pills that night anyway. However, my Mill looked at me with hopeful eyes, wanting me to take it. So I said I'd take it later and headed to the bedroom with the sleeping pill and a glass of water in hand. I discreetly wrapped the sleeping pill my Mill gave me in a tissue and pretended to take it, then threw it away. Then I pretended to fall asleep as is. Even with the help of alcohol, I couldn't fall asleep right away. As I was tossing and turning in bed, I heard the bedroom door quietly open. "Emma, you're asleep, right?" It sounded like she was confirming, assuming that I was already asleep. So I didn't answer and just let the moment pass. Then my Mill moved toward the closet at the foot of my bed. Then she opened the closet and started rummaging through it. "Huh? What is she doing?" I watched through half-open eyes. She had a mini flashlight in her mouth while she searched, and she seemed very adept at it. After a while, she took my wallet out of my bag and started taking out the cash inside. "What? Isn't this theft?" I almost blurted out something but held back, biting my tongue. After making sure my Mill had left the room, I checked my bag again. Used as I thought, the money was gone. I considered secretly following her, but instead, I decided to call someone. 20 minutes later, my younger brother Bob arrived, dressed in his police uniform. "Sis, that's right. My brother is a police officer on duty at a local precinct. I knew he was working the night shift today, so he was able to come right away." My Mill was apparently still rummaging around the house. She was apprehended by a fellow police officer who came with my brother, and she was arrested on the spot for theft. My Mill was shocked and asked, "Emma, you were awake?" Afterwards, as she was being led away, she yelled at me, "So you were pretending to be asleep the whole time? You didn't take the sleeping pill I gave you?" It should have worked really well. It was 2 in the morning. I thought about calling my husband, but I knew he'd be exhausted from work. However, my brother, who was still there with me, calmly suggested, "I think you should call your husband. After all, it's his own mother who's done this." So I decided to make the call. "Hello, sorry for calling so late. Your mom was caught stealing money from our home and got arrested. I thought you should know." My husband on the other end shouted, "What? Mom stole? Are you serious?" "Yes, I'm serious. If you don't believe me, would you like to speak to Bob?" Then handed the phone over to my brother. The person there was not my usually cheerful brother, but a stern-faced police officer. After finally understanding the situation, my brother passed the phone back to me. "If Bob says it, then it must be true. Understood. I'll come home first thing tomorrow morning." And so it was decided that my husband would come home the next morning. By midday the following day, he had returned from his business trip, so we both headed to the police station. My brother, now in plain clothes, greeted us when we arrived. It seemed his shift was already over, but he had waited for us. Then we came to hear the unbelievable truth about my Mill. Turns out, your Mill is a habitual shoplifter. She insisted that she had no family, So it seems no one ever contacted your husband about it. We were shocked to hear this revelation, and it turns out there was one person who knew about this all along. Her ex-husband, my former Phil. My former Phil had divorced her precisely because he knew about her kleptomania, and yet, when they split, she promised to never steal again and took custody of my husband. What a betrayal. At that time, even though she had promised not to steal or shoplift again, and took custody of my husband. According to my mill, she said, I couldn't live with Matt anymore, felt lonely, so I ended up shoplifting. Even the thought of stealing came from that loneliness. We're family, so I never thought the police would be called. If I had known this would happen, I wouldn't have resorted to stealing. While she claimed to regret her actions to some extent, when asked if she truly felt remorse, the police officer said it didn't sound like she was genuinely remorseful. Upon hearing that story, my husband was furious. He even went so far as to say, was I raised by a criminal? I too was at a loss about what to say to comfort my brother and how to handle the situation. It was my brother and I who revealed my mother-in-law's true nature. Silence hung in the air for a while. All we could do was wait, our eyes fixed on my husband, hoping he would say something. I'm not sure how much time had passed since then. It could have been an hour or maybe just 10 minutes. As we waited, my husband suddenly said, let's go. Huh? You mean we don't have to take care of your mother? I asked that, but my husband responded, Mom went as far as giving medicine to Emma and trying to steal money from our house. This is beyond just petty theft, right? Maybe it might sound better if we call it shoplifting, but essentially, she's become a habitual thief. It's time for her to face the consequences. I believe she needs to fully acknowledge her wrongdoing. With that, he started walking. It seems that he has no genuine intention of taking care of my mill. If my husband decides to do that, my brother and I have no intention of interfering. We decided to follow my husband's lead as well. As for what happened afterwards, in the end, my mill ended up serving time for the crime of theft. Not only was she a habitual shoplifter, but the theft that occurred in our own home, which led to her arrest, was considered quite severe in nature by the authorities. After careful consideration, my husband decided to sever ties with his mother. He couldn't forgive her for attempting theft by drugging me with alcohol and even sleeping pills. The gravity of her actions was something he simply couldn't overlook. Moreover, he couldn't tolerate the fact that she had kept the reason for her divorce from his father a secret all this time. I was feeling a bit regretful myself. Indeed, the theft committed by my mill is inexcusable. But if I had handled the situation myself without involving my brother at that time, perhaps my husband wouldn't have felt the need to sever ties with her as a parent-child relationship. That's how I felt. I couldn't bear the weight of it on my own. So I decided to talk to my husband about it. I'm sorry I told Bob about your mother's situation right away. If I had tried to handle it on my own without involving Bob, maybe we wouldn't have had to sever ties with her. Then my husband said, that's not the case. It's okay. The situation with my mother, she was a habitual shoplifter, and getting caught was her inevitable fate. Besides, it's fortunate that our home became the first scene of the crime. We should think positively that other households were spared from becoming the crime scene, shouldn't we? He responded in that manner. I'm not sure if he was entirely serious, but I choose to believe my husband's words. And so, as for us, during that period, my husband went through a phase of shock. Meanwhile, my brother and I tried our best to interact with him as normally as possible. My brother continued to visit us just like before the incident, and each time he came over, I prepared delicious snacks for him. As we continued in this manner, my husband gradually began to regain his spirits. When he had completely come to terms with everything, he told me, I'm sorry for making you worry all this time. I'm okay now. And at that moment, there was something joyful. I found out that I was pregnant. The pregnancy became a turning point, and I decided to stop taking sleeping pills. Surprisingly, even without them, I found that I could sleep well. I'm glad to hear about the positive change. With the joy of a new family member on the way, I hope to work together with my husband to create a happy family and make efforts in that direction.